In this vlog, I'll tell you my 10 biggest mistakes that I've made over these 30 years that I'm producing. Hey, what's up? This is Laidback Luke, DJ and producer. August 1992 I started producing, and I didn't celebrate it last year because I'm really not excited to tell all of you how old I am. And it's funny, a lot of you know me from my DJ skills, but producing was actually my first love. Now in this vlog, I'm not gonna get super technical because I want you to see the bigger picture in this. So the bigger picture beyond just being in your DAW tweaking knobs, I want you to see the full scope of it. I am gonna give some practical tips in this vlog as well, but the most of it is, man, I've made a bunch of mistakes over these 30 years. And without further ado, let's dive straight into it with my number 10, producing music at a way too loud of a volume. And it's tricky, right? Because music sounds so good if it's loud, you can feel it, you can feel the energy, you're in the studio and you're banging out to it. Well, this is what I did about the first 5 years of my career. And I just remember getting out of the studio with a beep in my ears and listening to my music at a lower volume and thinking, why doesn't this sound the same as at a higher volume? And so at a certain point it became that bad that I got used to music being that loud. I even couldn't distinguish what was actually loud and what was actually low. So it was basically all the same volume to me. I remember being in the car with my babies about 20 years ago, listening to music that I had just made, and I had this special method to not blast their ears out in their cars, and which is snapping with my fingers. And if I could hear the actual snap, I knew that the music was at a normal volume. And this almost gave me a sort of a handicap, right? Where music couldn't be any louder than it was and I still couldn't hear it. But then I had an epiphany. If music was always the same volume to me, then why not listen to music at a low volume? And so I started doing that. I started making music on living room volume, and furthermore even turning down the volume as I would go. Can you imagine my ears after 30 years of producing really loud music? So it's helped me tremendously. Try and turn your volume down as much as you can. My number 9, purely and only making music for me. As an artist, this is a glorious thing, right? Purely being the artist and just making the music that you want. Absolutely fine. If you're happy with that, then go for it. But I tried that. This must have been about 18 years ago. I was putting out tracks, and arguably the best tracks that I've ever made, and no one was listening to it. No one was buying it because I was literally only purely making it for me, and only I was getting it, and the rest of the world seemed to not get it. It was then I realized, because I do feel my music needs to reach a lot of people, I feel my music is worth that. And so in order to do so, and in order to keep being happy as an artist as well, I figured out I could make music 50% for people and 50% for me, and just always make music that I would be happy with. And when I put that in work, my music started to reach a ton of people, and a lot of people would listen to it, a lot of people would buy it, and I was being kept happy as an artist as well. A huge one for me as the number 8 in this vlog. This is the story. After collaborating with the Swedish House Mafia, I found out methods and a way to make music real fast, and the Swedes and I were on the forefront of the loudness war. I remember famous producers coming up to me and saying that they would use my tracks as a reference for their loudness, for their how the kick and the bass would sit. And for 10 years, maybe even longer, I was real comfortable with those techniques. But it was only recently that I turned around and I thought, man, the world caught up. There's new techniques around, there's new plugins around, there's the majority of the producers that have figured it out how to get the kick and the bass and your tracks as loud as possible. Also, the loudness war seems to be over. Much like companies develop, and if you're in a company, you keep on learning things about your trade. It's the same for music production. So never get stuck, and it's unbelievable. After 30 years of producing, I still learn something new each and every day. And to tie in with this, it's my number 7, where I was leaning way too much into my master chain. And I would just produce into it and it would always sound incredible. And for a long time, my mistake was thinking it's all about the master chain. But now I know. Now I realize the mix, the actual mix is everything. And I'm probably not telling you anything new, but the actual mix mix, the way things are in balance, the way you EQ your separate elements, all of that is actually more important than the mastering, or coincides with proper mastering. And it's only recently that I understand the significance of that, hence why I'm sharing this mistake with you. What's your journey? Have you been producing for a long time, or are you just starting out? Make sure to leave it in the comments below and hit me with a like and a subscribe and that bell notification as well. If you're enjoying this right now, let's go back into it. Number 6, a mistake that you could make, and something that I needed to get into as well, is being able to produce on the road. Granted, you start out as a producer, everything's going great, you have a really nice studio, for which I'm thankful for that I actually have a studio again. But you're there, you're producing amazing music, and before you know it, one track shoots out of there, is in everyone's playlists, and all of a sudden you are supposed to tour. Maybe you're up for it, maybe you find a good DJ agency, and there you are, touring the globe. 1 year goes by, 2 years go by, 3 years go by, and before you know it, you're out there and you haven't produced anything because you're not in your studio. And there's various ways to go about this, right? Just pack up your laptop, go out to the park and produce a track, or put it on your kitchen counter and sit there for a couple of hours, see if you can produce. There's all sorts of things you can come up with as to how you're able to produce on an airplane, or in a hotel room for that matter, but this is definitely something you might want to keep in mind. Number 5, if your tracks aren't in the charts or aren't hitting it big, it doesn't matter. I want to tell you what the real goal is in producing. Making something out of nothing is spending time in your studio, sitting there, making something that you really like, you're really feeling it, your hands in the air, you're screaming in your studio, making something amazing. Whatever happens after with the track, if it gets denied, if it never gets signed, if you get feedback that you need to change stuff, if you get haters when it's out, it doesn't matter. The real gold is everything before that. If your music spreads out to a lot of people, somewhere in the future, you will get messages of people saying, "Oh, I have this special memory of this track by you," or "I met my girlfriend then and there listening to your track," or even people that played your track at their wedding, people that were in the hospital and your track gave them the will to go on. That, my dear viewers, is the real gold. Okay, so we're here for the last 4 of my biggest mistakes in producing in 30 years. And don't go anywhere, stick to the end, because I have an amazing bonus mistake advice for you at the end, which I think you'll find really important to know. Bit more practical tips for the last 4 here. So number 4, the kick drum is everything. Throughout my years of producing, I've noticed that whenever the kick drum is not the most effective for your track, it doesn't matter how much you master your track, it doesn't matter how much you mix your track, the track will never really come out properly. Now, there's plenty of debate going on as to what kick drum with what kind of bass you need to use, or how to alter the kick drum using subharmonics to make the kick drum more full and more stand out, but it is trivial to find the right kick drum for your track. Number 3 is not working in concepts. The amount of hours I've spent sitting in the studio, maybe full days, just clicking through presets or taking samples or making sounds and not going anywhere with it because I didn't have a plan to take into the studio. For me, it's been such a time saver to just throughout my day, even breakfast, or even just before I get out of bed in the morning, or even at night before I sleep, just to think about what kind of track I want to make the next day or in my next studio session. And speaking of maximizing studio time, my number 2, sometimes sessions are so tremendously long. Even if you have a concept, sometimes you get stuck. Sessions can take days, weeks, months to finish a track. But here's what I learned in these 30 years. My biggest tracks, my biggest hits are actually the shortest sessions as well, where you're in the studio, you're in a state of flow. It's as if it's been handed to you. The session goes really smoothly. I got out of the studio, I listened back to the track thinking, wow, this is a huge banger. And it turned out the rest of the world thought the same. So those long sessions, it's just really important to recognize those and just step away from those. And my number one biggest mistake, which I never ever gave into, was actually thinking of giving up producing altogether. And in my career, I had at least 7 to 8 times that I just wanted to quit. I was thinking, this is not going anywhere. I'll never make it. I'm not good enough. You know, all those dark thoughts that come into your mind whenever you doubt yourself. 30 years later, I'm still doing it. I'm still here. I'm still making music. I'm still enjoying it. And if I would have actually gave up all those times that I thought about it, I would have not been here. And I don't want that to happen with you either. Yes, you can pause. You can take a sabbatical. You can take some distance off of it to like regroup yourself. But please do not ever give up on your dream, because if you give up, that's an ending point. But if you just take a pause, then that hope and that dream is still there and it still has potential. Just like you have potential. And we came out to the bonus section here in my vlog. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe if you're feeling inspired right now. The last bit right here is a big one as well. The way you experience a track in the studio versus playing it out can be very different. There's been plenty of times where I had made the mistake of making a track, making a big remix, or finishing a track. It happened to me a couple of times, and I didn't test the track out. And I'm not talking even about a car test. I am actually talking about going out to a show, club, festival, either playing the track out or hearing the track out, and then all of a sudden you come to these perspectives that you never thought of in the studio. Just a certain break that needs to be different, a certain sound, or the way something hits. And it's funny because you spend so much time in the studio tweaking on a track, and then all of a sudden you take it out of the studio and into the environment it's supposed to be in, and all of a sudden it becomes real clear. And so personally, I love doing that. And every track I put out, and I've put out, you know, over this decade, has been trialed and tested. And you can be assured that when you hear a track of mine, you will know that it works on a dance floor as well. Within becoming a professional producer, I never realized I needed to be an artist as well. Being an artist, you need to take press pictures, or you need to be able to do interviews. I made vlogs about that as well. Make sure to check those out. So I realized this wasn't a very actual technical vlog about producing, and I would love to make one. The things that I've actually learned in these 30 years in a technical way. So if you would like that, make sure to hit me with a like right now. Leave it in the comments, and I will catch you back here for the next one. Until then, L's up.